All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're gonna tackle something that you might think is pretty straightforward. Clean water.
Yeah.
In this day and age, with all the technology we've got, you'd think everyone would have access to clean water, right?
They could say, yeah.
But well, turns out it's not quite that simple, and that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Right.
We're diving into an article called, give me a second here, Us. It's translated as Clean Water. Technology alone is not enough.
Okay.
And, get this, over 2 billion people still don't have access to safe drinking water.
That's a huge number, and it really kind of puts things into perspective when you think about it. I mean, over 500,000 deaths every year just from diarrhea because people don't have safe water.
It's really a stark reminder of just how big this problem is.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you wonder why. I mean, we've got hand pumps, solar disinfection, ceramic filters, we've got chlorine. What's the missing piece here?
Right. Back in the early 2000s, there was so much optimism about those technologies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And for good reason, right? I mean, they're simple, affordable, they work really well, at least in a lab setting.
Yeah.
But when you get out into the real world, things get a lot more complicated. And around 2009, a bunch of studies came out that were pretty sobering. They showed that these interventions, these technologies we were so excited about, weren't actually making a difference in diarrhea rates in some areas.
So what happened? It's like they worked in the lab,
right,
but not in real life.
Yeah. That's where the whole idea of the human factor comes in.
Okay.
And it's basically recognizing that it's not enough just to have the technology. You have to take into account how people actually behave.
Right.
The economic realities they're facing and whether these solutions can actually work in the long term.
So it's like, we all have that gym membership.
Yeah.
We know we should use it, but, life gets in the way and we don't always follow through.
Exactly. And now imagine you're, living in poverty.
Yeah.
Every single task is a struggle. Just getting water is hard enough.
Right.
And then you add on these extra steps, filtering, boiling. Even if you understand that it's good for you, it can just be too much.
And the article had some pretty striking examples of that. Like in Cambodia, they found that those ceramic filters, people were basically abandoning them after like 4 years.
Oh, wow.
They were just breaking.
Wow.
Then in South Africa, filters were failing way too soon because people were just using them so much they were overwhelmed. And then there's this crazy statistic, something like 50,000 broken boreholes across Africa.
Seriously.
Just sitting there useless because nobody planned for maintenance.
It's like they were thinking short term.
Right.
Just install it and forget it, but you got to think about the whole life cycle.
Yeah.
What happens when it breaks? Are there parts available?
It's got to be sustainable.
Exactly.
So let's talk about specific methods like boiling. Seems simple enough. Heat kills germs. Clean water.
Yeah.
Done.
Right.
What could go wrong?
Well, it sounds simple, but remember you need fuel to boil water. And that's not always easy to get or afford.
Yeah, and a lot of people are using, wood or charcoal, which leads to indoor air pollution.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other problem.
A huge problem. Over 3.5 million premature deaths every year because of it.
Yeah, that's a chilling statistic.
It is. And the article talks about this young girl in Tanzania spends all day tending to this indoor cook stove.
Wow.
Just to boil water. It's a huge burden, especially for women and girls.
It's like we're solving one problem, but creating another.
Yeah, exactly.
Studying water shouldn't mean risking your lungs.
If you think about the whole picture, are there unintended consequences? Are there better solutions out there?
Okay, so boiling has its downsides. What about chlorine?
Okay.
Cheap, effective.
Right.
Seems like a good option.
It can be, but it's not quite as simple as it seems.
Yeah.
Chlorine kills bacteria, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's got limitations. To keep stored water safe, you need a lot of chlorine.
Right.
And that can make the water taste and smell like, well, a swimming pool.
And nobody wants to drink that.
Exactly. And it doesn't work as well in cloudy water, which is a problem in a lot of places. Plus, you got to mix it properly, wait for it to work.
It's a lot of extra steps.
Yeah. And if you're already struggling, those extra steps can be a real barrier.
Makes sense. So we're seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Even simple solutions like boiling and chlorine.
Right.
They're not so simple after all.
They've got their own challenges.
Right.
You really got to think things through.
So where do we go from here? We've got the technology, but it's obviously not a magic bullet.
Right.
What are some solutions that actually address these complicated challenges?
Well, that's where things get really exciting. We're starting to see a shift. People are starting to move away from just focusing on technology
Okay.
and starting to really focus on the human element. And that's where some really innovative stuff is happening.
Okay, well, we'll have to save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
So we've seen how tough it can be to get clean water to everyone, even with all the technology we have. But are there any success stories out there? Are there things that are actually working?
Oh, absolutely. It's not all bad news, you know. In fact, it's really encouraging to see how people are starting to shift their thinking. It's not just about the technology anymore.
Right.
It's about understanding the people, you know.
Yeah.
And that's leading to some really innovative solutions.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are some of these promising approaches? What's giving you hope?
Well, one thing that's gaining a lot of traction is the idea of making water treatment automatic. The easier you make it, the more likely people are to use it.
Right.
There was this really interesting study in Kenya
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
where they put chlorine dispensers right at the water collection points,
Yeah.
and they saw a huge jump in chlorine usage.
Wasn't it like a really dramatic increase?
Yeah, it went up to 51% in villages with the dispensers,
Wow.
compared to just 6% where people had to go out of their way to get chlorine.
That's amazing, just by making it more convenient.
Exactly. Make it easy, and people will do it.
Seems so obvious in hindsight, right?
It does, doesn't it?
So what else? What other strategies are working?
Another interesting approach is bundling costs. Studies have shown that people are more willing to pay for water access itself than for clean water.
So you're saying combine the fees.
Right.
So it's not like you're paying extra for clean water.
Exactly.
It's all just part of the cost of having water.
Exactly. And it changes the way people think about it.
Yeah.
It's not an extra expense, it's just what you get for your money.
Okay, that's really clever. What else?
And then there's the power of information. In one study in India, they gave families water quality test kits,
Oh.
and they saw a big improvement in people boiling their water. Once people could see the danger in their water.
Oh, interesting.
It really motivated them to do something about it.
So it's like they needed that visual proof
No.
to really understand the problem.
Exactly. You can't fix what you can't see.
Right. Okay, this is all really fascinating, but I imagine there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right?
You're absolutely right. What works in one place might not work in another. You really have to understand the specific needs of each community.
So what are some of the things that successful water systems have in common?
Well, researchers have identified a few key factors. Consistent funding is crucial, of course, and it's really important to involve the community in the decision-making process.
Okay, that makes sense.
And maybe most importantly, you need strong local leadership.
This is someone who's really invested in the project?
Yes, and accountable to the community.
Right. It's about giving communities the power to solve their own problem.
Exactly, not just imposing solutions from the outside.
The article talked about a case in Rwanda where a really high-tech water treatment system actually failed.
Oh yeah, that was a really interesting case.
Even with all the technology, it didn't work.
It didn't. It had everything.
Right.
Settling tank, sand filtration, even solar-powered UV disinfection.
Wow, that's incredible.
But it didn't have the support it needed to succeed.
Okay.
No plan for maintenance, no monitoring, no sustainable funding.
So even the best technology won't work.
Right.
If you don't have the right systems in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like building a house on sand.
It's all about the foundation.
Exactly. Technology is important, but it's only part of the solution. You need to look at the social factors, the economic factors, the political factors, the whole picture.
Okay, so we're moving towards a more holistic understanding of the problem. What's next? What else is on the horizon? So we've really gone deep on this clean water issue. I mean, we started off thinking about all the cool technology, and now we're talking about systems and people. It's way more complicated than I initially thought.
It really is. And for me, the big takeaway is, technology is great, but it's not the whole answer.
Right.
We need to understand the human side of things.
Yeah.
The social and economic realities, and we have to build systems that are sustainable, that can last.
It's not just about a quick fix.
No, it's a long-term commitment.
Right.
You got to be in it for the long haul.
The article kept talking about systems building, which sounds kind of boring,
I know, right?
but it's super important.
It is. It's about creating infrastructure, policies, funding mechanisms, and most importantly, getting the community involved.
Yeah.
So they feel like they own the solutions.
It's like we've completely shifted our perspective, right?
We have.
We started with technology, and now we're talking about people and systems.
It's a totally different way of thinking about the problem.
And that's got to be a good thing, right?
It is. It gives me hope, you know. We're starting to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And we're finally starting to understand how complicated this issue really is.
So what about the UN's goal? You know, clean water for everyone by 2030.
Ambitious goal.
Yeah.
But I think it's doable if we learn from the past. We can't just keep doing these short-term projects.
Yeah.
We need a long-term vision.
Right, right.
And we need to prioritize community involvement, local leadership, all the things we've been talking about.
The article quoted one engineer who said, "You'd think with all the resources and knowledge we have, we could figure this out by 2030. But then she said, when you look at the reality, it's pretty daunting."
That's a great way to put it.
It's like, we're optimistic, but we're also realistic.
It's complicated. There's no easy answers.
Right, right.
But it's too important to ignore.
So what about our listeners? What can we do as individuals to help?
There's actually a lot you can do. You can support organizations that are working on the ground.
Okay.
You can advocate for policy changes.
Right.
You could try to reduce your own water consumption.
Yeah.
And you can talk about it, you know.
Spread the word.
Raise awareness with your friends and family.
Yeah.
Even small actions can make a difference.
So to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. What will you do to help? What's your contribution going to be? Because we can solve this problem, but we have to work together. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.